What a wonderful song choice, Dan. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Don't tear yourself apart. I love it. You're stronger than you know. The power of music, the power of poetry. Oh my goodness. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody online. Hi, Thelma AU, our newest friend on Instagram. Hi, I hope you're watching today. As you can hear in my voice, David has brought home his first gift of the school season to us at the house, so that's always nice. We like that. I feel great otherwise. If you notice me sort of shifting, I worked out a little aggressively this week, and I gave myself something called piriformis syndrome, which I didn't know exist. But it's a little muscle in my hip that is impinging on my sciatic nerve. And occasionally I just have to do the little moves. I just gotta, so if I'm like, I'm in a dramatic spot and yet I'm doing the cucaracha, you're like, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Thank you. As a teacher of mine once said, my voice may be a little sultry today. And I thought that was a funny way to put, I'm feeling a little sick in the voice. But aside from having first grade in my sinuses, I feel fantastic. Life is very good. 19 pounds down on my weight loss journey. Just so as has been said, our journey this month is about forgiveness. We started off talking about anger and then fear, and last week it was the impossibility of grievance. And this week we're at the forgiveness part. We've arrived. So, we need backstory. So today we're talking about forgiving yourself. And it's pretty common to find it easy to forgive another person than to forgive ourselves, right? We understand that another person acted out of fear or confusion, pain, limited awareness. We can look at their history and recognize the forces that shaped their behavior, but when we look at our own mistakes, somehow that understanding can disappear. We judge ourselves as though we should always have known better, always have been stronger, always acted from our highest consciousness. We forget that we too are human beings in the process of awakening. Recently, I went up to Idaho to work on a book. It's a memoir, and I encountered this while I was writing this memoir. As I revisited experiences from when I was younger, I found that I still had feelings about some of the things that had happened during that period of my life. I really thought that I was settled with all of it, but the feelings that were coming up were not about what people had done to me. They were about things I had done. I remembered times when I was expressing my pain and anger in ways that hurt other people. I remember how I had spoken to people, how I had treated them, how I sometimes passed my pain along instead of healing it. And writing about those experiences removed some of the distance I had placed between myself and that younger version of me. Memories that had become stories became real again. I could see my behavior more clearly, and what I saw was not always flattering. And I realized I had been holding on to shame. It would have been easy to defend myself, right? I could have pointed to everything I was going through at the time. I could have tried to excuse my behavior because I was hurt, angry, frightened, overwhelmed. And those things were true. I was all of that. But an explanation isn't the same thing as an excuse. My pain explained some of my behavior, but it didn't erase its effect on other people. And I needed to own what I had done. And that's an essential part of forgiveness. Genuine self-forgiveness doesn't begin by pretending, as Dan said, that nothing happened. It doesn't minimize the harm we caused or rewrite history. It doesn't turn accountability into self-justification. We can't really forgive what we refuse to acknowledge. But acknowledgement isn't the same thing as condemnation. So after acknowledging what I had done, I faced a question. What was I going to do with that knowledge? Was I going to use it to become more conscious and compassionate? Spoiler alert, I was. Or was I going to turn into evidence that I was unworthy of love? I realized that I needed to show compassion to the person I had been because that person was in pain and didn't yet know how to carry it without spreading it. I needed to forgive myself. And self-forgiveness asks us to hold two truths at the same time, right? I was responsible for my actions, and I am still worthy of love. Both are true. If we only accept our innocence, then we avoid responsibility. And we only accept our guilt, we deny our spiritual nature. Healing requires enough honesty to acknowledge the harm and enough love to refuse to make the harm our permanent identity. There's an important difference between saying, I did something harmful, and saying, I am a harmful person. Right? One statement acknowledges an action, the other creates an identity. And an action can be examined. Restitution can sometimes be made, behavior can change, but once we turn the action into identity, we begin to believe there's nothing to heal because there is nothing in us except the mistake, right? Shame says, this is what you are. We've all heard people say it, right? I'm kind of a terrible person, or I'm not the forgiving type, or that's just the way I am. But love says, this is something you did, and now you can choose again. Or this is something you did, and you're not that same person anymore. You've grown. You don't need to hold on to the shame. Self-forgiveness isn't permission to repeat the behavior. It's actually part of what stops us, it frees us from repeating it, right? When we remain trapped in shame, our attention stays fixed on ourselves, on how terrible we feel, how unworthy we believe we are, how badly we want to escape our memories. But when we forgive ourselves, we become available for something more useful, like making amends where possible, changing our behavior, allowing what we've learned to shape how we live now. Forgiveness turns regret into wisdom. So from a spiritual perspective, the need for self-forgiveness reaches even deeper than any particular actions we might take, because beneath many of our mistakes is a more fundamental belief. The belief that we're separate from Source. And when we accept separation as true, self-hatred follows naturally. If I believe I'm separate from God, then I believe I'm separate from the love that created me. I begin looking outside of myself for proof that I matter. Right? I compare myself with others. I defend myself. I attack what frightens me. I cling to approval, and I resent those who don't give it to me, including myself. It doesn't seem funny, but you know. When I believe I'm separate, I believe others are separate. And when I believe other people are separate from Source, I can easily reduce them to their behavior. I can decide that some people are worthy and some are not. I can forget that the same life expressing through me is expressing through them, even when that life is obscured by fear and ignorance or pain. And if I believe I'm separate, then I believe the world is separate from source, and I accept limitation as the final truth. I believe that healing is impossible. Reconciliation is impossible. Transformation is impossible, and that the past possesses more power than the presence within us now. So when I try for healing or reconciliation or transformation, right, I tell myself I want it, but it doesn't happen because deep down, I believe they're all impossible. So then I've failed, and I begin to believe that limitation is the final truth. And these are untruths about who we are and what is possible. And we need to forgive ourselves for believing them. It's happening. It's not that we're foolish or spiritually deficient, right? It's just that belief in separation is part of the human experience. We're born into a world that teaches us to identify with appearances. We learn to see ourselves as isolated bodies competing for limited love, limited security, limited recognition, limited good. And then spiritual awakening begins to undo that education. And we remember that separation may feel real without being spiritually true. We remember that we live and move and have our being in the source. We remember that our mistakes can obscure our divine nature, but they cannot destroy it. I can't get off this metaphor. The sun does not cease to exist when clouds cover it. In the same way, the divine image within us doesn't cease to exist because our fear or anger has distorted our behavior. And self-forgiveness clears away those clouds, lets that light in. In the New Testament, in the story of the paralyzed man, when those in authority asked Jesus why he felt he had the power to forgive sins, Jesus asks, which is easier, to say your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take your mat and walk? It may seem easier to speak about forgiveness because forgiveness is invisible. Anyone can say the words. But Jesus connects forgiveness with a visible change in condition. The formerly paralyzed man is called not only to hear that he's forgiven, but to rise and live from a new understanding. Get up and walk is the challenge of forgiveness. If I say that I've forgiven myself, but I continue living as though I'm permanently defined by my past, I haven't yet accepted forgiveness. If I continue rehearsing the accusation, or punishing myself, or refusing the good that life offers me, I'm still lying on the mat, paralyzed. Forgiveness says, you have looked honestly at what happened. You have accepted responsibility. You have learned what you can learn. Now get up. Walk differently. Speak differently. Love differently. Make amends when doing so is possible and appropriate. And when direct amends would cause more harm, let your changed life be your amends. We can't return to the past and become the person we wish we had been, but we can honor that wish by becoming that person now. Right? Change is vital. Impermanence is a fact. Everything in the world of form changes. Relationships change. bodies change, communities change. The work we're called to do changes. A role might be right for us during one season and no longer right during the next. And impermanence can frighten us because the familiar gives us a feeling of stability. But change isn't necessarily evidence that something has gone wrong. Sometimes change is the evidence that we've listened, we've learned, and we've allowed life to lead us forward. There was a time when I felt drawn to accept the position of operations manager here at the center. I trusted that calling, and I'm glad I did. The position gave me the opportunities to serve, to grow, to understand both this community and myself more deeply. And now I feel drawn toward other pursuits. So today I am sharing with you that I have tendered my resignation as operations manager of the center. This is a change in my role, not a departure from this community. I will remain a licensed practitioner here at the center. I may still teach classes. I may still be asked to speak on Sundays from time to time. You simply won't see me serving as operations manager. My time in leadership has revealed to me that being a minister is not something I'm interested in at this point in my life. And that realization isn't a failure, it's clarity. Our leadership team is aware, has been aware of my decision. I will serve through the end of August. There will be a town hall here after service on September 6th. So if you have any questions about our future, you can ask them, and to the best of their ability, they will be answered. We are still looking for a full-time senior minister. And in the meantime, there will be an excellent lineup of guest speakers, and we will have the leadership of our very capable board and our practitioner team. Sometimes we enter a role partly to discover whether it is ours. And we shouldn't treat new clarity as the betrayal of an earlier decision. Right? The earlier choice may have been completely right for the person we were and the understanding we had, but we're not required to remain unchanged in order to prove that our past choices were sincere. We can bless what a season has given us and still allow the season to end. And this too involves forgiveness. We forgive ourselves for changing. We forgive ourselves for not fulfilling every expectation, whether it's our own or someone else's. We forgive ourselves for discovering that a path we once considered is not the path we now want to follow. That's impermanence. Impermanence is a fact, but it doesn't mean that nothing matters. It means that everything must be loved without being possessed. Everything must be held lightly without being clung to. Roles change. But the source of our life does not change. Right? Forms pass away, but the life expressing through those forms continues. The position may end, but what I've learned, the relationships I've formed, the love I've experienced here, remain a part of me. Perhaps there's something in your own life asking to be released. Maybe it's a role you've outgrown, an identity that no longer tells the truth about you, or a mistake you've carried long enough. Perhaps you've confused punishing yourself with taking responsibility. Maybe you believe that if you stop condemning yourself, you will somehow be letting yourself off too easy. But endless punishment doesn't heal the past. Only love can transform what pain has created. Forgiving yourself doesn't mean saying that your actions didn't matter. It means saying that they won't have the final word. The final word belongs to the truth of who you are. You are not separate from Source. You have never been separate from Source. You may have believed in separation. You may have acted from that belief. You may have hurt yourself and others while trying to protect a frightened or wounded sense of self. So own what you did and repair what you can and learn what the experience came to teach you. And then offer compassion to the person you once were who didn't yet know what you now know. Forgive that person. Forgive yourself for the false beliefs you accepted about your worth. Forgive yourself for the limitations you accepted as reality. Forgive yourself for the times you failed to recognize the divine in another person, and forgive yourself for the times that you failed to recognize it in yourself. And then take up your mat and get up and walk. Walk into a greater honesty, into deeper compassion, into the next expression of your life. Thank you. The past may explain how you arrived here, but it doesn't determine where you go from here. You are still capable of choosing. You are always capable of changing, always capable of loving. You're still held in the wholeness of God. You are not separate from Source. And you are forgiven. You are always forgiven. Let's go within. Our Source is right here, right now. Our Source that is love, our Source that is compassionate, joyful peace, our Source that is infinite balance and harmony, our Source that is oneness and wholeness. It is right here, right now. It is expressing in all things. It is expressing in, through, and as me, in, through, and as each one of us here. Our Source is right here, right now. And so I know that we go forward in love, in joy, in peace, in hope, and knowing that all is well. I know that we shake off fear, that we recognize change. We recognize impermanence. We embrace the one we once were and say, it's okay, it's all right. I'm sorry, and I love you. And we let go, and we let God. And we express the divine within us freely and fully. We are the light of the world. We are the light of the world. We are the light of the world. I am so grateful that God is God, so grateful the truth is true. Grateful to share this word, grateful to know that it is. It simply is. And so, in that gratitude, I release it. And in great certainty and gratitude, I know you will join me in saying, and so it is. Thank you so much.